Hey shiny shins. So today we are going to be doing a mega 14.3 patch preview. That means that because there's maintenance for the next 4 hours and there's no detailed preview today, I figured we're gonna go over everything. That includes the Ride Franxen post, the entire Phreak patch preview, though I will skip ahead because he tends to be a bit rambly. He looks very disappointed in me for saying that one. I make myself just a teensy bit smaller, as well as all the PBE stuff, because, well, I mean, to be blunt, well, you know, without a detailed preview, there's not really that much to go on, and with rank down for another 4 hours, I don't really have anything to do right now. I suppose I could do my Volibear video, but, you know, let's be real, most of you show up for the patch videos, so, we're gonna be using our old friend u.gg to help give perspective as to different things as we go along. Now, the Franxen post, it does go over some ranked placement stuff. I'm not gonna go over that in this video because we're gonna stick primarily to like the patch notes themselves. Although, you know, changing the way ranked placements and MMR and stuff like that does have a very large impact on people's like life, if you want to call it that. You know, I don't think it's really what this video is going to be going over. We're mainly just going over the patch preview. Okay, so we're gonna, if you want to see the react or whatever you want to call it to the Phreak video, that'll be after this. I'm gonna go in order, so we're gonna do boom, 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 because from what I can tell, Phreak doesn't have a detailed preview in his video either. I did look over a little bit of it. So I guess we'll do this, and then we'll look at like what some of their actual changes are after they give the explanation for it. So, okay. A bit of a mix-up, so no detailed preview today. Bard is building too tanky right now. Build's doing a lot of damage. We'll investigate getting him into more squishy builds, or if he's building tanky, take a damage trade-off for that. Meep tuning is pretty difficult on short timelines though, so it's something that requires a bit more soak time, so expect at the earliest next patch. So basically saying, they need more time to deal with Bard. They don't want a situation where they had earlier, where Bard kind of got nerfed off the planet because they messed with his meeps. Now, personally, there's some other support champions that are proving to be a bit more of an issue in need of dire tuning. While Bard tends to, you know, he's a bit overpowered at every rank. Bard, at the very least, in my opinion, you guys have a totally different opinion. I think Bard is a champion who tends to not really like feel that bad to fight. He, even when he's overpowered, he doesn't feel that bad. I don't really know a better way to put it. I think it's because a lot of what he does feels obvious, right? Like his ult is obvious. Him running through a tunnel and stunning you when you jump after him, like that's obvious, right? There might not be something you could have done about it, but it does feel, you know, kind of obvious when it does happen, right? So, I think Bard should stay tanky. I don't think that Bard should really be that squishy, because like, as a champion, as a support, he does tend to need to get into range, then stay into range and continue to auto attack, right? So I don't think making Bard squishy would be a good idea. And, you know, the dude only needs to lose 2% win rate, which on Bard, I have to believe Bard's win rate is always inflated by one tricks and more importantly, just by people being dumb around him. I don't know a better way to put it. I feel people just kind of play dumb around Bard, me included. So, yeah. Zeri is receiving changes on top of recommended item change. Okay, so basically they said Zeri was only getting a recommended item change. Instead of that, she's getting a recommended item change and a buff. So, neat. Wukong buffs are targeted at top lane, so they're going to buff Wukong for top lane. Thank you. Okay. Crit versus lethality on Marksman is an ongoing discussion. Nothing to share just yet, though. I talked about that in my video yesterday. Easy bake math is that 18 lethality results in about a 10 to 11% damage increase, whereas 20% crit results in a 15% damage increase only on auto attacks. So in most situations, it's going to be better to have lethality than to have crit. Most lethality items don't have attack speed though, so it's typically crit and attack speed versus just lethality. But then lethality items tend to also have lots of like utility that can help make up for that. Now, I think that it's either Phreak or Franxen, someone talks about it here. Basically, crit marksmen are not doing bad at all. In fact, and they're fine with marksmen having like crit lethality builds. That's like fine in their opinion. And they don't think that to be as blunt as possible, they don't think that the AD carry community is correct, which they never are. That you know, crit marksmen are horribly underpowered, in dire need of massive sweeping changes right now. Okay, we're continuing to monitor Sundered Sky, Hubris, and other items that seem strong. Well, this is what I said yesterday, was it not? Theo mocked me for saying this yesterday. This is exactly what I said. I said Sundered Sky is currently the only Bruiser item that is making Bruisers take longer to kill. Without Sundered Sky, everyone would be defaulting into a lethality build. Spear of Sojin is not nearly as good as people make it out to be. Black Cleaver is basically troll tier. Most other Bruiser items are just bad. So there's basically Sundered Sky, Trinity for champions that can use that, and those are the only actual good Bruiser items right now. Even Titanic Hydra is mostly being abused by people outside of the class just to get an extra auto reset, like Caitlyn, right? So I don't think Riot really realizes when they say, we think tankiness is just fine. Like, the second you guys nerf Sundered Sky, I promise you, the second you do that, I promise you, we're going to be seeing a lot of people going into funny lethality one-shot builds again. We're already starting to see that, but Sundered Sky being so strong is like, it's like the anchor that's keeping the ship from sailing off into lethality funny one-shot builds, right? And we are seeing already competitively that many champions who even are good with Sundered Sky, like Aatrox, are just swapping over into Hydra. Sundered Sky is receiving some stat adjustments to bring its damage down and health up, which is probably fine and might open it up to more champions. I don't think Riot... Okay, so to be blunt, I don't think Riot's intention for Sundered Sky was for it to be first itemed on a champion like Aatrox, and to just generally, not like 100%, obviously, like I play against Aatrox all the time, right? I don't think it makes him literally unkillable, but it gets him pretty close to it in a 1v1. So yeah. So now we'll do everyone's favorite thing here. We're gonna watch Phreak's video. I hope.
What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak.
Okay, the volume is good.
Lead of 7 Team's live pod here to talk about patch 14.
Okay.
Reaver. We had to do a few micro patch fixes on pretty much day one. Those landed okay. Let's talk about bigger topics though, which is first off, time to kill. So I made a very rambly. I should start scripting that more in the future, but whatever. Regardless, I spent some time comparing it to other historic patches, so looking at 12.9 and 12.10. 12.10 was a durability.
I mean, I'm going to skip ahead a lot because he does tend to ramble a lot. I can kind of tell, like, I can literally see it on his face when he's about to ramble, so I just skip 5 seconds ahead, and it pretty much has not failed me.
Really update, 12.19 and 12.20.
12.10 was a durability update. Okay, so 12.10 was a durability update.
12.20 was the anti-snowball patch, and 13.20, sorry, 13.19, 13.20, and then 13.24 to now, which is 13.24 compared to 14.1 compared to 14.2. 13.24 is the last patch of the previous season.
What I will say to Phreak, what I will appreciate about Phreak is he tells you patches, and then he tells you what was in the patches, and then he compares to those patches. So 13.24 was the last patch of last season. Everyone can understand that, right? 12.20 was the anti-snowball patch. So 12.20 was anti-snowball. 13.24 was the last patch of last season. So when he talks about 13.24, he's just saying this was last season, right? He's not saying specifically 13.24, although he is specifically saying it. He's just using it for the most part as a stand-in. 13.24 means last season. 12.20, yeah, 12.20 means durability update.
20.
No, sorry, 12.20 was the anti-snowball patch. 12.10 was durability. Okay, everybody get that? Okay, I'll help remind you as we go forward. But yeah.
1 compared to 14.2. 13.24 is the last patch of the previous season. Anyway, TLDR, average time to kill across the game League of Legends is pretty much identical to 12.10 or 13.20 or 13.24. It's the same as 14.2. So we are back to where we were before the seasonal update as far as average time to kill, and that is specifically excising.
Sorry, my spacebar wasn't working properly. I don't know why. It just literally wasn't working properly, so I couldn't pause it. I wanted to put in a thought here. Okay, So you're saying time to kill is the same as on those patches, but one thing I found that Riot does, I'm not trying to call them off as being like despicable, evil, blah, 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 right? But one thing I think that Riot does, now you can go watch this video yourself if you guys want to, right? Sorry, I was about to burp, but then didn't. You can go watch this yourself if you want to, right? But I think one thing that Riot does as a company, and I've noticed this throughout all their different developers, they actually tend to look at data, and then they tell you like answers from that data that you yourself might not have gotten, because that might not be the answer. So when they say time to kill is the same, what they could be saying is time to kill is the same on average, but then their average isn't like what do they mean by average? They're like, well, if we say 2 classes are harder to kill and 2 classes are easier to kill, then on average people die at the same rate, right? But the problem is I keep noticing them using tanks. Tanks are harder to kill, therefore time to kill is longer, or time to kill is average. But the thing is, tanks taking longer to kill doesn't mean that AD carries die at the same speed. AD carries are dying faster, right? Tanks taking longer to kill doesn't mean that mages take longer to kill. Mages are dying faster. And to keep this in perspective to some of you guys, some of you who might not really be thinking about this, if we look at this long list, let me just look at this right here. Let's look at like the top 20 champions, right? We have 1 tank who becomes a squishy assassin. So at 1 tank, Udyr, do we include Udyr as a tank? I mean, kind of, sort of. It's a bit difficult to say for him. So we have 1 pure tank, 2 pure tanks, 3 pure tanks in the top 20. Zach is up here at 25. Shen's at 31. Sign's at 33. I don't think anyone should be picking Sign, though. Do you get my point here? By saying tanks tank longer to kill, so therefore AD carries. But the thing is, like, AD carries get picked pretty frequently. Every game will have an AD carry. 2, in fact. Whereas, statistically, each game might include half a tank. Now, we can see that support tanks are... Actually, they're less popular. Huh, I thought they were more popular. Well, support tanks are dropping off again, I suppose. At least at the highest ranks, right? Nautilus isn't in the top 3 anymore, which is shocking. Thresh is down here at number 14, which is also shocking. So I guess what I'm saying is that they've often used these arguments that I don't like, because you can't just average out the classes, right? If 90% of people are dying faster and 10% of people are dying slower, that doesn't equal out to the same kill speed, because, you know, some people are dying faster, some people are dying slower. If we add up the amount of, because you're always going to have 2 AD carries in a game, most of the time you're going to have 2+ mages in a game. That's already 4 right there. Whereas for tanks, on average, we're going to have, again, maybe 1 tank per team. Right? So...
tanks from that calculation. This is getting rid of top and jungle tanks and saying, okay, across from
let's look at
that calculation. Typically,
let's say,
excising tanks from that calculation.
Okay, so I'm saying without tanks.
Getting rid of top and jungle tanks and saying, okay, across the rest of the roster, it's about, you know, I think like on average, like it's like 1% more durable than back then, but whatever. Now, it's worth noting that is still including the global class of supports that have gotten tankier, because tank supports have more gold, and enchanter and mage supports have a guaranteed 200 health on their jungle.
There's also one other thing.
But even just taking a specific snapshot, which is just Marksman, right? This is a class that got the least disrupted. If you look at just Marksman, they are identical. They are like 99.8 to 100.2% as durable. If you average all Marksmen, they are the same. So, of course, mages, or AP users in general, are the outliers here. Even if you were an artillery mage like Ziggs, you used to build Saros more often.
Okay, he's rambling again, but like,
health on it.
But because this is talking about specifically what I was talking about, I need to let him finish.
Used to build Shadowflame had health on it. Used to build Horizon Focus had health on it. So there are a slew of ranged AP users who, by being a higher level than Marksman, are already tankier than those champions anyway, but no longer build 200 health on Shadowflame, no longer get 300 health on Night Harvester. There is a definite sort of subset of AP champions that are squishier than before. This is especially true for AP assassins who are happy to go Lich Bane into Storm Surge into New Shadowflame, and that's just going to be their build. That is fine. I think it is worth us cultivating a set of mid-sized AP champions. It's basically the old Night Harvester melee crew. I think there is some value in getting a subset of that champion, such as, I'm going to keep bringing up Gragas, to make them a little bit more durable. If it needs to be from base stats, that is fine. It has to be from kit updates, that is fine. It has to be from item updates, that is also.
He does not know how to say things in a reasonable time. I'm trying to like let him finish his thought, and it's been like a minute.
Okay. That is something that we will start to tackle as we've gotten the rest of the game into where it was before in Time to Kill. And then even then, we're going to go a little bit further, and we'll talk about that down the line. I will mention, though, that supports as an overall class, it's basically you queued support, but you're not literally Zyra or Brand. So it's enchanters and tanks. Champions that are like typically considered supports. I think Ivern is in this list as well. Just generically to say, hey, support type champions. Anyway, this is a class that is globally up around 4%.
Oh my god, Dude, I'm trying to let him finish his thought, because like he was saying specifically what I was saying is excluding tanks, we think durability is longer, right? But then he says AD carries about the same, mages are squishier, and it's been like 3 minutes
and
now.
Extreme outliers like Bard, who is up 11%. And for reference, 11% is the difference that 12.10 made on League of Legends. So it's like Bard got another durability patch because of how his builds have moved. Bard is probably too durable right now. We should work to unwind this to some degree. But regardless, there are certainly some... We're getting to the point where there are individual outliers here, but the game as a whole is actually back where it was, and then we can say, okay, well, we can take this and move where we want to go. But as far as people saying, oh, the game is just too bursty now, this is statistically not supported unless you are an Akali player. In which case, yeah, you're an assassin, you're squishing them before. And that's kind of okay. Again, outside of like about 10 champions, the game as a whole is about where it was before. So the subreddit can change its title from League of One Shot because it's no longer true. Either way, this is not going to be like, we did it, whatever, but it's just to say that, hey, we might want to go lower, even further, lower in burst overall, but to say the game as a whole has moved in this direction. Okay. Talk about overall balance real quick. Obviously, there are some pretty substantial...
Okay. Oh my god. Okay. I wanted to let him finish his entire thought, so I didn't like cut him off and say anything wrong again. Okay. So what he did there is something I actually don't like, is he's basically saying, and again, I don't like how he did this, supports are tankier. Okay, that's great. AD carries are about the same. That's fine, probably, right? AD carries didn't really get any changes. They're dying at about the same rate. They probably benefit the most from the health rune changes, which I think was specifically done to help them anyway. But oh my god, Kitty. Oh my god, Kitty. You do not need this much attention. Do you see what she does every time? Every time I finally give her attention, she runs away and she starts scratching her scratching post, pretending that she wasn't just screeching at me. Kitty, come here. Come here. Come here. Okay. So, one thing I don't like that he does though is he talks about mages, and he talks about like, unless you're playing an AP assassin, then you know you'll feel about the same. But the thing is, if we look at the mid lane, we can see Twisted Fate, who he said, oh man, they're going Storm Surge Lich Bane, which looks like Twisted Fate isn't going Storm Surge anymore, but he definitely is still going Lich Bane, right? So Twisted Fate is still doing like weird janky AP stuff, right? Azir is giga overpowered. Akali AP assassin, Katarina AP assassin, Silas. I do believe yes, Silas is doing Storm Surge Lich Bane as well. So when he says, man, unless you're playing an AP assassin, you're about the same tankiness, right? Unless you're playing with or against an AP assassin. But then when we look at it, we see AP assassin, right? Let's look at the top 5. AP assassin, AP assassin, AP assassin, AP assassin. Well, wait a minute, right? I mean, I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. Second off, the point I'm trying to make here, and I was talking about this with Frankson, at the very least I was trying to get it through to him. The problem is, bruisers overall are squishier unless you're using Sundered Sky. With Sundered Sky, bruisers are a bit tankier, yes, but the problem is, Riot's going to nerf Sundered Sky, and you can see them already prepping us for it right here, and the second they nerf Sundered Sky, bruisers are going to be squishier as well, because they're going to be going with squishy, funny one-shot builds, instead of, trying to, actually build like bruisers, because the other bruiser items are just, to be blunt, they're just not that good, okay? So I guess to Phreak here, my problem is by saying, you know, supports are tankier. Great. You gave them better items. You gave them more gold. Okay. You're including champions like Gigabard in here. Okay. Which you guys mention a lot. Despite Bard only making 11.7% of the picks, he does seem to make up a lot of the discussion. Here we have, oh my god, Kitty. Here we have, in top lane, we have most people aren't playing tanks. He said he was excluding tanks, but then we see Sundered Sky is being used a lot. I mean, and just to show my point here, we have Aatrox, whose best rush item is Sundered Sky. We have Jax here, whose second best item is, you guessed it, Sundered Sky. We have Riven, who's building, you'll never believe this, Sundered Sky. We have Fiora. I haven't even looked at Fiora. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Oh, no Sundered Sky. Okay, that's wonderful. So, of the top 5, 3 of them are going Sundered Sky. So in mid lane, 4 to 5 AP Assassins. In top lane, everyone going Sundered Sky. In jungle, we have Brand and Lilia killing everybody. Okay. So all I'm trying to say here, is that, you know, basically, what's the right way to put this? We can use the stats to say things that if I'm actually paying a lot of attention, I can notice are going to break really quick. Okay, Bruisers are tankier because of Sundered Sky. Okay, but what happens when you guys nerf it? Then what? Okay, mages are squishier, and you won't even notice, unless you're fighting an AP assassin, you won't even notice that the game is more damage. But then everyone's playing AP assassins, right? Like, do you get what I'm trying to say here? So, Kitty, I cannot hold you and make the video at the same time. It cannot be done, Kitty.
Balance outliers. I wanted to bring up really briefly that by the end of 1324, if you merged all ranks of skill together, every champion except for one was between 47 and 53% win rate in their primary role. Primary meaning the one that people played the most. So, I mean, Yone, it's a coin flip, that was top or mid. Either way, he was above 47. But if that was Seraphine, that was Seraphine bot lane. Or no, sorry, that would be Seraphine support, because we're looking at all ranks. If that was Ziggs, that was Ziggs bot lane. If that was Karthus, that was Karthus jungle. Regardless, either way, that's where we were before. I would like to get us back into that realm. I want to be very clear that there are some champions that I think deserve.
Okay, so 47 to 53%. Yeah, I think that's good. I think overall, Riot has done a pretty decent job avoiding complete dud champions these last couple of years. I wouldn't say a perfect job, but I would say a pretty good job. But I will say that, yes, definitely on this patch, there are way too many dud champions. And now, just to be clear, there are champions still who, even in the 47 to 53% win rate, can be complete duds, okay? And by that I mean champions like Sion, champions like Set, champions that, you know, like Volibear, they're kind of simpler. They don't really have anything better you can do, right? Like, there's some of these lower win rate champions like Akali, like Sylas, like Jace, like Yasuo. And I'm not saying they're good, but I'm saying, like, there's stuff you can do on them to try to do better. Even Rumble is a hyper lane bully who can fall off really quickly, so his skill is always, you know, continue to dominate the laning phase and don't fall off, right? But then you have some of these heroes like Volibear, Sion, Set, they can't really do much better, right? So when they're bad, they tend to just be unplayable. And I would say that there's definitely way too many just dead, unplayable champions right now. Champions who realistically are just, no one will ever pick Set or Sion or Volibear or Yorick or Renekton. It's just not going to happen. No one is going to play those champions because they're completely terrible.
To sit at somewhere around 47-48, and champions that deserve to sit around 52-53. But again, want to compress back down to +-3, that I think is pretty reasonable for the game, and there might even be further outliers there, but we are getting closer there. Right, I don't get 57s anymore, but again, there's still some work to be done. Absolutely, there's going to be plenty of seeing if champions are.
I just realized I could fast forward him when he's. So basically, what he's doing here is just talking about that he doesn't think there's any like giga mega broken champions. I mean, there still are, in my opinion, even within his 47 to 53 threshold. There are still some champions that I would call giga broken. Lilia, Brand are definitely over the top. Senna is just a complete monster. I think Riot just needs to admit Senna kind of feels more balanced and reasonable, around like 49-48% win rate. And that every time she gets pushed to 51%, her ban rate, win rate, and pick rate just absolutely skyrocket. And she becomes, as a whole, one of the most broken champions in the game. So I would agree that balance has gotten worse. I don't think balance is completely untenable, but I disagree with his assessment here. There are definitely way many champions who had 48% win rate literally feel pointless to ever play.
That's kind of talk about 14.4 and beyond, is making sure that going now more toward individual champions, individual kits, of which there's only so much time to do, but still trying to take the most important ones and make sure that, you know, we place each champion into the right place. If that's a champion gets a full 2 weeks of work, or champion gets 2 days of work, or whatever, we're gonna start going more individualized in terms of like, okay, we're gonna start building more individual, I don't say kit updates, but just like spending more than just a couple hours on a buff or a nerf.
It's all one sentence.
A lot of it has been just trying to tune the systems and champions now that a bunch of stuff is moving around, right?
That was all one sentence. You guys might feel it's mean-spirited to skip ahead. That was all one sentence. So I do agree that, you know, there's only so much time you can spend on each individual champion, but it is interesting that he called some of them important. He said the important champions. I'd like to know which champions are important and which aren't. Probably the more popular ones are the more important ones, right? I think that's fair to say. Like, it's not mean to say, you know, you could just be honest, right? Like, at the end of the day, it is probably more important that Aatrox and Darius are good because they're very popular and they've always been, well, not always, but for the last 3-4 years, they've been good, right? So, like, Darius and Aatrox have a very large player base. Lots of people play them and lots of people enjoy them, right? So it's more important for them to be good than, say, Rumble or Renekton. I mean, sorry, Renekton players, but, like, at the end of the day, there's not that many of you, and I think most people that play Renekton just kind of first pick him. I'm sure there are Renekton mains. Set, Sion, like, once again, these are smaller player bases. One thing I definitely think is true, though, some of these champions that are, like, doing too good, even into the higher ranks, some of these champions, like, up here that are doing too good, I think one thing Rod could do, remember that win rate is, like, there's only 50% win rate in the game, right? So one champion could be, if there were two champions in top lane, one could be 75% win rate, one could be 25% win rate, they average to 50%. Do you guys get that, right? So I definitely think that some of these champions up here don't really actually need nerfs. All they need is for these absolutely terrible champions to be brought up a bit, right? So if Set was brought up a bit, if Volibear was brought up a bit, if Sion was brought up a bit, like, I'm not sure doing all that would, like, oh my god, now Aatrox and these guys down here are reasonable and fair, right? But, like, it would start lowering their win rates a little bit to where they'd start be sitting comfortably around, like, the high 49-50%, which, by the way, I think that's one thing about Aatrox. Aatrox is always, like, most balanced, like, high 49%. Even at 50% win rate, I start feeling a bit uncomfortable with Aatrox. I know that sounds weird, but, like, whenever Aatrox is at, like, 50% win rate, my exact thoughts are, ooh. Like, he feels best around, like, 49%. So I definitely think that, like, they brought up champions, like, even Ornn, I don't think is the greatest right now. Some people seem to think so. I don't think so, right? If they brought up some of these champions and made them better, it would drain win rate out of these champions. And I just, bringing this more back to, I guess, Phreak's video here. Oh, God, we're only 6 minutes in it. I definitely do think that, and this is just me, I definitely do think that more attention could be paid to some of these champions that are just terrible. And, you know, to be blunt, there's only so much you can do with Renekton, right? Like, you're not going to restructure his entire kit. You don't need to go in depth into it, right? What is bad about Renekton? What would I do about Renekton right now? What would I do about him right now if I wanted to make him more balanced? Well, I think, you know, one of the more important things to do, and this is just something that annoys me, right? But something you could definitely look at is making the enhanced Q damage a bit better. Right now it's 140% AD. It could be 150%. Why could it be 150%? Because every other AD ratio on his enhanced version goes up by 50%, except for some reason his enhanced Q. I also think enhanced Q could maybe then also, I don't know, have some scaling on it, perhaps. Maybe a health ratio instead of 12 to 36% champion healing. maybe if the base number was like 3% healing per champion or 4%, something like that. Maybe even 5%. Ooh, 5%, right? But do you get my idea here? Because I think one thing about Renekton that is true is that he does not scale very good, and I think you could push him to scale a bit better with health builds, and especially with his Q healing, he could scale better with the healing. As things like Death Dance's healing has been nerfed, Conqueror's healing has been nerfed, Wit's End lost its healing, you know, etc., etc., etc. Lots of bruisers with healing in their kit have not had that healing increased for many, 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 many years. So, in other words, if we use Darius as an example here, Ride buffed Darius's healing again, and that made it feel better to play because, you know, even now, even when you play Darius now, you'll notice that your Q heal really isn't doing that much. Like, it helps, but even after the buff, it's not doing that much because Bruiser healing has only gone down over the years, and outside of Sundered Sky, they don't really have much healing at all. So I do think that some of the Bruisers that are intended to have more healing could have their healing tuned up. To use Set as another example here, where is Set at? I think that Ride could look at maybe restoring his health regen from his passive, maybe buffing the health regen on his passive late game, maybe making the health regen on his passive, like, maybe not at rank 1, but maybe it like gets percent health regen, like missing health regen per second that goes up over time. So that in the later game, he can play at a lower health bar and try to keep himself in a fight, right? I'm just giving suggestions here because obviously you can't spend too much time on these champions. But, you know, to be blunt, when you guys are talking about, oh, we're going to buff like 5 champions this patch, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, just toss him a bone then, Phreak. Like, just toss him a bone. Like, toss Ornn a bone. Ornn's not really that amazing right now. You could do something, like Renekton, Set, Sion. These champions aren't the most complicated. You could do something to help them.
Like Singe might just be okay with a 10% AP ratio nerf on Q, but some champs might be more than this, right? So let's move forward, though. Let's talk about what's going into this patch itself. And first up, there are a pretty large set of system changes. So up first, we are taking another swing at burst damage. Now, to be clear, this initially spawned before 14.2 had ever landed. So we're still in the middle of 14.1, and we knew that burst was up globally in League of Legends. Tanks were more durable, fighters were pretty close, and then otherwise, the game was clearly burstier. Now, before we ever locked this patch, we got the data. I looked at it, and my boss looked at his own version of it, and essentially said, okay, yeah, we generically have time to kill back where it was. That said, I'm really keen in trying to lower burst even further.
Lower burst even further. That'd be good, but I think one of the issues... I have to imagine you guys have the numbers of this, but DPS feels a bit lower, but burst feels a bit higher. Now, that makes sense. Ability haste went down, and damage went up. This means burst is higher, but DPS is lower. This, unfortunately, does have the side effect where certain champions who do have healing or shielding or etc. Are doing quite good. We can look no further than top lane. Let's look at Masters Plus as an example here. You can see that champions have been kind of popping up in top lane who haven't really popped up in top lane before. Particularly at Masters Plus, it's been a while since Darius has been, a top 6 pick, right? And you have certain champions like, let's use Fiora here. I'll use Aatrox with Sundered Sky as well. Champions that can heal a lot or shield a lot tend to be very difficult to deal with right now. Udyr is kind of abusing the crap out of this. And what Udyr is doing is he's just generally being so difficult to remove that a lot of people are struggling to remove him. Now, this isn't to say that every champion is lower DPS. Gwen's doing just fine right now because Gwen has absolutely insane DPS. So I do think some ability haste definitely needs to be returned to the game. I think Black Cleaver definitely needs to go back to 30 ability haste. I think that some mage items need their ability haste increased as well. So that mages don't just have like the one ability haste item. I think tanks need some ability haste too. Yeah, basically the problem is I think DPS right now is too low, whereas burst is too high. It averages out to slightly lower DPS, but it averages to much higher burst, obviously.
One anecdote I have, I did not verify this personally, but someone else told me this, I'm going to take this true, which is that player survey results for matchmaking quality improved on patch 12.10. 12.10 is the durability update, which basically makes me believe that if the game is less bursty, you have more room to outplay and feel like you're better than your opponent. Now, of course, we have to be careful.
Yeah, I think that's true, right? If I'm playing against my opponent, right, there's only so much you can do, right, as a player. We're not professionals. We're not playing at 0 ping, right? If I'm going to use Aatrox here, if I'm playing Aatrox, and I put down my Q, and I think to myself, aha, that Riven will E backwards now. So I E forwards my Q, but she E's forward. So we both dash into each other, and then she one-shots me. That doesn't feel so great, right? Because like, oops, I made one mistake, dead from full. But if in that situation, then the fight goes on because I don't instantly die. And then maybe my next E, I accurately predict her, and I can maybe buy some space. Then that feels better. It feels less snowball. It feels less that one single mistake, one wrong prediction can end the game. This is particularly true when I play Darius into Aatrox. All the time I play Darius into Aatrox, and what I'll do is if I predict that my opponent is going to E forwards on Aatrox, I just pull them in. So they E forwards right as I cast my pull. Oops, they realize I'm dead. And then I kill them because I'm Darius, I pop Ghost, I run them down, right? What I'm trying to say here is that, when one mistake can get you killed, the game starts feeling much worse. Because, yeah, you oops, I died, and then the entire game starts crumbling down around you. When you have to make 5, 6, 7 right plays to get a kill in a row, and I'm not saying you need to make better plays, but right plays, right? So if I'm playing, let's say I'm playing Riven into Aatrox, and I E into his E, right? And I accurately get into melee range. Then I save my Q and I dodge all his Q crit spots. And then maybe on his second E Q3, I dodge out as well. Aatrox dies, right? But in this situation, I made a series of good plays. I made a 1, 2, 3, 4 good plays instead of just the one into stun combo kill. So I actually agree with what he's saying here.
That assassins are still viable, of course, right? This is a class that players are frustrated to fight against, but also we are committed to make sure assassins are a viable class of champ to play in League of Legends.
I wonder who's more annoying for average player, Bruisers or assassins? Because I know both are hated a lot. Like, I know the community hates assassins and hates... the community hates assassins and they hate Bruisers, and they actually secretly really hate tanks. That's something that doesn't get brought up a lot. On average, tanks are just really, 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 really underpowered, I think. And the community seems to always think that they're overpowered and dominating the game. Like, if you look right now, literally the only tank in the top 5 is Kosante, but he's Kosante. Other than that, we see Malphite come in at 9. Udyr, if you call him a tank, is at 8. And then we have to go down for a while to find another tank here, right? So what I'm trying to say is tanks, despite making up a very, very small part of the meta, tend to always be acted by the community as if they're dominant and destroying the game, right? So just as an aside here, I'm wondering who's more frustrating for your average league player, Bruisers or assassins?
All which to say that we'll keep those guys in mind, but let's try a league with even less burst statistically on average than 12.10. And so
But no, the problem here, Phreak, you can't have less DPS by removing ability haste, and then also have less burst. That's just all damage is now neutered and lowered. Now we're getting back to season 5, Rengar versus Zac. Both of them literally can't do damage to each other because they're out healing each other. I don't know if anyone has ever played this game long enough, but that used to actually be a problem where top lane would be Rengar versus Zac, and neither of them could actually do enough damage to ever kill each other. And the lane was literally wave clearing because no matter how hard you tried, you could not kill each other.
So there is a large reduction in burst damage. And the overall, I will say large, whatever. The overall point here is to lower the basically, the razor here is...
Okay, I've spent 40 minutes here, and I think I'm going to skip past the majority of this stuff and see if we can go to champion-specific changes.
Item,
oh my god.
And item 1. Actually,
okay. I'm sorry if you guys want to see this. I'm trying to not make this.
In the past, sure.
I'm trying to not make this video 40. Well, we're already at 40 minutes. I'm trying to not make it 5 hours. It looks like at the rate we're going, I'm already gonna have a 2-hour video. So I'm trying to not go too far here. Is what I'm trying to say. Okay.
Changes to functionally the marksman space, so lethality, crit, non-hit. So Youmuu's is getting a ranged mod on the amount of out-of-combat move speed it gives, as well as a ranged mod on the active move speed. Youmuu's is just very clearly over on marksman. It's just clearly too good. Collector, when lethality became a flat stat, also clearly became too good on.
No, Phreak. Collector did not become too good when he did the lethality change. Collector became too good when you randomly gave it 6 extra lethality here, and then oh boy, where is it? You give it 6 extra lethality here, and then you change the lethality formula, only reduced the lethality by 2, and then gave it 5 more damage. And then your compensation for that was to only push up the gold cost by 100. So since 13.10, now remember in 13.9, this is a totally viable, perfectly good item, right? Let's just be clear on that. So then in 13.10, the item went and it got 6 more lethality. Then in 14.1, it got 5 more damage. Now let's be blunt here. Okay, everybody, let's be blunt. 5 more damage is worth 175 gold. So it only went up by 100 gold cost and got 175 more gold in stats. So this was an item that was already good, that was being built all the time, that then got buffed, and then was already teetering on being pretty goddamn broken, and then they buffed it again. So it wasn't the lethality formula. Don't go back here on history. Don't pretend here that we didn't make this change. You did make this change. You buffed it twice. It wasn't, oh no, the lethality formula changed and now the item's overpowered. How could this happen?
This is our way of step 1, nerfing Neela and Misfortune, who are just over right now. They're just a little bit too good. And
only at the low ranks, so they're only too good at the low ranks.
Fine. There's a buff Reaver, 5 AD. This is just kind of make it a more competitive option. Right now, its only users are Gangplank and Ezreal. This gives it a slightly more, slight more of an option to be maybe a Sivir option, maybe a Lucian option, maybe Corki wants to go for like this plus Quick Blades is the.
Wouldn't Essence Reaver, I think the ideal space for Essence Reaver would be to be where it's actually good on Draven. So Draven goes Essence Reaver instead of going a lethality build. It would be a tough call, but I think you could maybe try it.
Build this kind of space maybe is available in this case, but we don't expect that ever to be a very widely appealing item. We know that Sheen doesn't scale with any other typical AD carry crit multipliers, but like neither does Energize.
Why not just make Essence Reaver scale and crit then?
And people built a shit ton of static Shiv and Stormrazor in the past. Sure, in some cases Stormrazor scaled off AD, but like
I'm not saying make Essence Reaver crit. I'm just saying like this item does up to 50% more damage on the proc based on your crit chance. So if you have a 100% crit chance, the proc does 50% more damage. And maybe at 100% crit, then the item actually outperforms Trinity, at least on the on hit, right? You know, I'm just saying something like that. So then like champions like Draven have an interesting option that also kind of pushes them into building a crit build. I'm just saying, like, if you're going this far, why not just actually... Okay.
Scaled off any AD carry stats, and it didn't scale off anything. So I think if you take a stance that ER will never be good because Sheen is never good, have you met all the Trinity Force users from the last season? Because there's plenty of champs that use like effects that don't scale, and that's fine. So I think much like this, ER will still be fairly niche. Like there's not a lot of AD carries that really use.
I do agree that it's going to be niche and there's not a lot of people that use it, but you are literally the designer. It is literally your job to make it more wanted, right? And energized effects, yes, they were good on AD carries, but from what I just off the top of my head, I mean, static Shiv gave wave clear and crit and attack speed and damage. Rapid fire cannon gave extra range and crit and attack speed and damage. And so it wasn't like these items were being built for their on hit damage; they're more being built for their effects. And let's be honest, static Shiv's effect was pretty goddamn bad. Is pretty bad for the game. Rapid Fire Cannon gave extra range on 1 giga attack, which definitely, as you built more and more crit, started to become Like, if you only need 4 auto attacks to kill someone, and you can get 1 free extra auto attack by having extra range, you know, being able to chunk a fourth of somebody's health off was considered pretty good, right? Like, I think we can agree with that. Like, oh, there's LeBlanc, and you just pop off an extra Tristana shot into her face, and all of a sudden she's at, you know, 3/4 health, and now she's like, well, wait. Now instead of taking 2 seconds to die, I'll take 1.5 seconds, right? You know, that starts, yeah. That's, you know, yeah.
Use Sheen patterns, and that's okay, but there's going to be a few users here, and if people want to try it, this item should be viable. Of course, we know this is a direct Ezreal buff. There are going to be Ezreal nerfs in this patch to go alongside it, but regardless, that is going on. Static Shiv, as I mentioned, is losing some of its PvP proc damage. This item was just undertuned when 14.1 came out. Its passive is actually quite weak. Even currently, there is a limit to how much wave clear we're allowed to give you before it makes the game feel like like we've broken the game. There's a limit to how much PvP damage this Energize can do because there's not gameplay around it. So it actually is, like, pound for pound, actually a fairly weak unique passive. That's just kind of true.
I don't think anyone would disagree with that. It's just like, you took an item that makes the game horribly unfun if it's good, horribly overpowered if it's even decent, and you put it back in the game, and now it's just horribly unfun and horribly overpowered all the time. I think I think what you're doing is you're realizing why the other developers removed it. You were probably casting at the time, and you got mad that it got removed. Then you put it back in the game, and now you're sitting here in the steering wheel, and you're like, oh, that's why the previous drivers did this. Yeah, that makes sense.
But instead of just like having the most stats in the game, because that's kind of silly, we're just not going to charge you the passive very much, and Shiv will be a very, very efficient item. If you price Kraken Slayers on hit damage as we price Reaper Bows on hit damage, Kraken Slayer's like 150% gold efficient, and that's very high, of course.
So basically, they're just going to make Static Shiv a stat stick that happens to give wave clear. Isn't that... I feel like that's definitely what they tried to do with the item last time before they removed it. If it's just like a non-scaling wave clear item, that's fine, I guess. Probably trying to push the proc too much did result in a lot of issues because, you know, it just causes champions to play around the proc, which again is not healthy.
But of course, you can't really say that's fair because it doesn't scale off of things like Hurricane, and of course you can fail the proc damage by, you know, not hitting someone 3 times. So that's not really a fair comparison.
I don't really care.
Something like Kraken Slayer, but regardless, the item is.
I'm skipping ahead because I don't really care. He's like trying to justify Static Shiv being a stat stick, and he's trying to compare it to Kraken Slayer, and I'm just like, dude, I don't care. Like, Kraken Slayer isn't a wave clear item, and Kraken Slayer's been overtuned as hell for so long at this point.
A fairly appropriate marksman item that people occasionally skip and buy other stuff for, such as the Energized Lucian builds, but that's like roughly an appropriately powered item, and Static Shiv apparently needs to be around that space as well, you know, 150-ish if we're gonna count everything fully together. That seems to be where AD carry items are roughly tuned. I think crit is probably a slightly overpriced stat, and so just saying every completed legendary is actually high efficiency because crit is probably actually too expensive. It doesn't really matter, right? At the end of the day, you just make printed items at the end of the day, and it doesn't matter what your made-up gold efficiency numbers are. Like, for example, the fact, like, if you use the League Wiki to look at gold efficiency, the fact that there is a component for ability haste.
I'm liking how he's come to the realization, guys. Like, guys, did you know that gold efficiency on items doesn't matter? Everyone's like, what? Which, okay, I will admit, a lot of you guys base your choices on gold efficiency. Like, oh my god, this item is 120% gold efficient. It must be overpowered. Like, the thing is, 90% of items don't do anything. I don't know if you guys notice this, but, like, the majority of items, like, don't do anything. Or, like, what's the right way to put this? The majority of items, actually, here, let me actually use Black Cleaver as a good example here. Let me look up Black Cleaver for you guys. If Black Cleaver gets its damage numbers back, if Black Cleaver ever like re-enters the game, and you can see those damage numbers at the bottom of the item. If you guys remember, when it was 30% pen instead of 24%, you'd look at those numbers and the item would often be doing like 1200 to 2000 damage at most throughout like an entire game. It was pretty common that Black Cleaver would contribute like 700 damage before the game would end. Black Cleaver was effectively a stat stick, right? And the majority of items don't really do that much. But the second problem is there are some items that do quite a lot. So if I was to look here, let me compare here. I'm going to compare Black Cleaver. Black Cleaver is 133% gold efficient. Oh my god. Did you guys know that Black Cleaver is the best item in the game? It's 133% gold efficient. That's crazy, dude. Sundered Sky, on the other hand, is 112% gold efficient. Oh my god. Black Cleaver is so much better than Sundered Sky, is what an idiot would say. So it's 133% gold efficient to Sundered Sky's 112%. But do you see what I'm trying to say here? The 112% gold efficient item is built almost every game on practically every Bruiser. And the 133% gold efficient item is basically absent from the meta and no one builds it. Do you get it? So yes, gold efficiency on items is a made up stat. Like at the end of the day, you just make an item and you try to make it so like completing the item doesn't power spike you too hard, right? Like you don't want completing an item and all of a sudden the laning phase is just 1. It's over, right? Like he completed his item and the game is just dead, right? Like he completed it 1 back before you. He will now solo kill you and kill your turret, right? Like you don't want that, right? But you know, that's basically what you do. You compare completed items to each other. You have a 1 item champion versus a 2 item champion, right? Like you guys get that? The 2 item champion will always beat the 1 item champion unless there's like some horrible mismatch in, you know. So I guess long-windedly, I'm just trying to say here, yes, gold efficiency is made up.
Haste that's undertuned makes every haste item have extremely high gold efficiency because it's this component charges you 50 gold per ability haste. That is not we actually consider ability haste to cost, but there is a weak component that builds into Warhammer and builds into all these other items. And of course, if you're just going to say, well, the cheapest component is what the gold stat's worth, it's like, well, you suddenly have really, really efficient haste items, which is fake, but doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, that's the other thing, true. A big problem is that ability haste is like laughably overvalued right now. Are you telling me 15? Would you buy a 15 ability haste item for 750 gold? Would you guys do that? How many people would do that? So for 800 gold, you could get 300 health. But for 750 gold, you can get 15 ability haste. Do you see what I mean here? There's definitely some stats like mana. Mana is generally on completed items. Mana is practically free because like one of the problems is no one gives a shit about mana after the early game. So like mana matters, but not really, right? So what'll happen all the time is people look at Frozen Heart and be like, oh my god, it's 10 billion gold efficient. It's the best item in the game. And often Frozen Heart is quite good. I'm not disagreeing with you. But, you know, they'll look at items like Frozen Heart and they'll decide this is the best item in the game. And no.
Again, this is to say that for the second time this year, gold efficiency is a really fake stat. It's a really fake stat. It's not terribly useful. I'll bring it up once in a while as like, hey, by the way, here's a number that you shouldn't really pay attention to, but hey, by the way. Either way, direct buff the Shiv by being a little cheaper, and it's not very good. It's going to lower, but who cares? Rage is getting plus 5 AD, plus 5 AP. Pretty small thing there, not much else to say. That item is...
Rage is getting 5 AP, 5 AD. So static Shiv, I don't care. You're making it more gold efficient. Rageblade, you're getting a tiny extra stats. Until Rageblade is made to not synergize with Master Yi's passive, and until Rageblade is made in a way that Kog'Maw doesn't just instantly abuse it to death, I think the problem is it's just going to be attached to those 2 champions. And I would prefer Rageblade was like actually usable on melee without just instantly breaking Master Yi into 10 billion pieces. And I would prefer Rageblade was an interesting item without Kog'Maw then just doing 10 trillion DPS. But whatever.
Kind of weak.
I'm going to skip ahead here.
Is going to thing on headline this item is strict.
These are not changes that need 10 minutes to talk about.
In this space as well. Different like
okay, 15 minutes?
Kaenic Rookern is getting a direct nerf here. Not much else to say except that Kaenic Rookern is getting a nerf. This item is definitely very, very good. It is a cooldown nerf as well as a max health shield nerf. This item is strong. It might be a little bit too strong still. Is what it is. Worth pointing out that I am not sure what the correct answer here is in terms of items who their power is very skewed toward the resist. And like the magic damage shield is functionally resists in that world as well.
No, it's not. 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 That's horribly wrong. No. If you made Kaenic Rookern, let me actually put this in the most blunt way. If you took the current Kaenic Rookern and you took it from 80 MR, 20% shield, and you made it like 100 MR or 120 MR even with no shield, it would be a worse item. One of the things about Kaenic Rookern that's actually good is the fact that the magic shield allows you to resist poke. It allows you to resist champions who shred all your MR, and increasingly, we're getting lots of mages who can remove all your magic resist. For some reason, Riot has decided that there should be more than one champion, and there's actually quite a couple now these days for some reason, that can absolutely obliterate your magic resist. To use Evelynn is 35 to 45% magic resist reduction. Rumble, even after his nerf, has 54% magic resist reduction. One of the things that makes Kaenic Rookern good as an item is the fact that it has a shield that just gives you a crap load of HP. Now, it's a bit stupid of Riot here to be saying we want to lower damage, but then turn around and here's one of the fundamental problems with League that Phreak and other people aren't getting is that defensive items are simply not good. That's just a blunt statement. Defensive items are just simply not good. Too many of them are too focused at countering one specific champion, where like it feels really bad when you're trying to kill an Omen champion with Caitlyn, but at the same time, if I build Omen and they have talent, even though he's a physical damage champion, I have an entire item that's doing like 400 HP and 55 armor, and that's it against talent. Like, ooh, what? That doesn't do anything, right? So I guess my point here, that I'm trying to make, my point that I'm trying to make here is that you can't take like the few defensive items that are actually good. You can't take the few defensive items which are actually contributing to keeping champions alive mid to late game and nerf them. And definitely that maybe you should have made Kaenic Rookern more of an interesting item with the shield. Maybe when the shield breaks, it should have done something. But as it is right now, you know, Kaenic Rookern is like one of the only defensive items that people actually enjoy building because it actually feels like it does something, right? I build Omen and I get burst by a mage. Oops. I build Kaenic Rookern because it gives me magic resist and a magic damage shield. Basically, every champion in this game does some form of magic damage at this point. Very few don't. Yes, you can list me champions that don't, but the majority do, right? So within a team fight, Kaenic Rookern, the majority of the time, that shield is just going to be bonus HP. The magic resist is going to be good. The health is going to be good, right? I never feel like when I build Kaenic Rookern, oh, this was a waste of my time. But I build Omen, I think that all the time. I even build Jack Show, and Jack Show is like one of the best defensive items in the game, and so many times I build Jack Show, and my thoughts are, well, this was a waste of time, right? Like, I could have just built a damage item and just tried to multiply my damage another time, because if you continuously multiply your damage, eventually you just one-shot people, right? But building a defensive item is building a defensive item. No one cares.
What that means is, when you buy it, you are not really protecting yourself against AD carries or fighters. That's interesting. I don't know if tank items are supposed to be pretty aggressively against mages. In this case, of course it is. It's a very obviously anti-mage tank item. That's maybe okay. Either way, obviously this item is a little bit too good. It's getting nerfed. If that's get nerfed again, we can do that. Hullbreaker's getting a tiny buff.
No, it's not useless against bruisers. I talked about this the other day. I've talked about this a lot, in fact. Kaenic Rookern, one of the reasons it's so good, let's just use top lane as an example. If you're fighting Aatrox, that magic shield will break. Aatrox will hit you enough to break that magic shield. And in addition to that, reducing Aatrox's passive healing is actually quite good for a lot of tanks. Aatrox's passive heals based on damage dealt. One of the, like, if you build Bramblevest into Aatrox, it's good. But like at 2 items, tanks still lose to Aatrox. But it's generally that item, that third item, when they finally get magic resist, that Aatrox goes from like slaughtering them to, oh wait, he can't. Because if you get like 50 to 80 magic resist based on which item you went, Aatrox will go from healing like, 300 per passive proc. He might go all the way down to like healing 150 to 200, right? So I'm just saying, like, Aatrox will proc it, Jax will proc it, Yone will proc it, Udyr will proc it, Gwen will proc it, Aurelia will proc it, even Trundle. Hey guys, Trundle's ultimate is magic damage. Trundle, even, I shit you not, will proc it. Jace will proc it. So, like, what champions in top lane will not proc that magic shield? Okay. K'Sante probably won't. Riven won't. Fiora won't. Darius won't. Camille won't. And that's it. Like, Garen won't. Like, do you see how few champions there is? So, if this helps Phreak at all, or if this helps anyone realize why Kaenic Rookern is such a good item, it's that actually a shitload of bruisers are doing magic damage right now. And it is actually quite a good item for dealing with dealing with mid-game mages while also doubling as being like a soft counter to some bruisers. Because again, if you have no magic resist, Aatrox's passive is going to shred you to pieces. So you have no magic resist, Jax's magic damage is going to shred you to pieces. If you have no magic resist, Yone's magic damage is going to shred you to pieces. If you have no magic resist, here, let me bring this up for you guys, because like some of you guys have totally forgotten about our good friend Trundle. Trundle's ultimate does 20 to 30% max health damage and then heals him for that much damage that he dealt. If you guys remember that. So if Trundle at level 16 is doing 30% of your health in magic damage, then healing him based on that amount, that's going to heal a lot. With merely a Kaenic Rookern, even with its nerf numbers, you're effectively going to take no damage from his ultimate. So that's just, I now have 18% more health, right? But then in addition to that, he's going to heal less because he's dealing less damage. So
the passive that buffs cannon minions will now work if you are nearby your allies. That's probably always correct. Rite of Ages, I mentioned the buff earlier. Stridebreaker.
Hullbreaker is getting a buff where it now affects your cannon minions next to your allies. That is interesting. That means that Hullbreaker is now effectively... This is actually the most interesting change they're doing for its impact on the game. This means that Hullbreaker is now going from a pure split push item into just an item. It's just going to be an item. This changes the game a lot more than I think Riot is even realizing. He talked for 30 minutes about changing static Shiv to cost less gold, right? But then when it comes to Hullbreaker now allows any team to push into a turret really easily, he's like, oh yeah, we're just doing that right there. No one gives a shit. Like, dude, cannon minions now being able to tank through like a Xerath combo or Ziggs combo, being able to get a cannon minion into the turret against 2-3 people defending, this actually does mean that champions like Set can go Hullbreaker and split push with Hullbreaker to take down turrets, but it also means, you know, if I'm winning my lane, hypothetically, I'm not saying I will, but if I hypothetically win my lane with Set and I grab a Hullbreaker and I go mid lane, I can now force that cannon minion into the mid lane turret and I can start trying to snowball extra. So it's not like, oh my god, this fundamentally changes the game, but it does mean that this item is now different. This is no longer just the split push funny item. It's now just a general item.
It's going to be moved into a Tiamat item, so it's going to have damage on the passive. Basic Tiamat's going to have damage on the active.
Okay, if you guys don't know this, Stridebreaker is going to have damage on the active, and yeah, Stridebreaker will have damage on the active, but it's going to share a cooldown with the other Tiamat items. I don't think he can...
its stat efficiency is going down, its price is going up.
Its stat efficiency is going down, and its price is going up. Does Phreak realize that Stridebreaker is terrible right now? Stridebreaker needs a hard buff. It doesn't need a side grade. It needs a hard buff. I don't know if Riot has realized this, but Stridebreaker here. Let me look. I'm just going to look for my own amusement. Let's see if Stridebreaker is actually good on Set on this patch. Nope, still no. It still has a lower pick rate with the same win rate than Titanic Hydra. It still has a lower pick rate and win rate than Sundered Sky. So, all I'm saying to Riot is if Sundered Goddamn Sky is outperforming Stridebreaker on Set, if Sundered Sky, an item which he can barely proc, is going to be outperforming Stridebreaker, then maybe there's a problem with Stridebreaker. Maybe Stridebreaker is significantly more terrible than you want to admit. And it is true. Stridebreaker is significantly more terrible than Riot wants to admit.
Overall, it is going to be unique against Ravenous and Titanic Hydra and whatnot. So you can't get a bunch of proc, button press all at once. It's going to actually essentially have the lowest of any of the active damages on these items.
Why?
But that's intentional. It has a slow attached.
Then is that it? You have nothing more to say? It took me 3 seconds to realize one of the champions who should be using Stridebreaker is not using Stridebreaker, and you're like, moving on, and I'm just like, well, wait, what do you mean moving on? And he's like, moving on, let's see, Garen. No, Trinity Force has a higher win rate and pick rate than Stridebreaker on Garen. I'm not kidding, guys. I'm not kidding. This item is no good. This item is terrible. The champions that should be building this item, the champions that should be using this item are not using it. They're not building it. And because of that, this item needs a large buff with no compensation. just giving it a little bit of damage and then lowering its stats and increasing its gold cost, that is not... Imagine Infinity Edge was not good on crit champions, and that's Stridebreaker not being good on champions that need mobility.
We have a whole bunch of champion changes in no particular order. Let's get into it. Ezreal gained more power than we wanted to give him in the previous patch. Also, Essence Reaver, which is now...
Okay, so Ezreal's getting a Q ratio nerf and an R damage and ratio nerf. We're an hour and 5 minutes into this video, so I'm going to try to start skipping ahead a little bit. But yeah, shockingly, giving Ezreal way too much magic damage. Because remember what I said, you convert physical damage into magic damage, that's a large buff.
Item of his is getting buffed, and so it is reverting the Q damage ratio buff, it is reverting the R damage ratio buff, and taking a little bit more flat damage off the R, so that Ezreal is a little bit less of a sort of burst mage kind of champion. I think we could take Ezreal's early game down a little bit more at some point. If we need to go after like his base AD or something, or a little bit of flat damage on early Q or something, we could. Regardless, we know he does currently have an early game power curve. We don't have to get rid of it, but he's certainly very good there. There's stuff we could do, but it's not crucially important. Just need to down a little bit because he's overshot and he's buff. Lilia is getting a very small tap to her passive damage. The ratio is not a lot of the heavy lifting here. It's going to be a little bit less passive damage down. People have more health, and so having more percent health damage could just go down a little bit. It's fine, whatever. Q ratio is the primary nerf here. Q is...
So Lilia will do less passive damage and less Q damage. My only concern here is they're nerfing the ratios on Lilia. In the past, Lilia has had issues where she just flips into a tank build after building the dot items. So like Leandry's into full tank, stuff like that. She's definitely done, builds like that in the past. My only concern is if they nerf the ratios, Lilia players might swap over into that because, it's not like Frozen Heart is unusable on her. It's not like... Yeah, I mean, I can see it right here. Landry's Torment into Riftmaker into Rylai's seems to be her best items, right? I'm just a little bit concerned that, like, she's going to swap over. But, I don't think it's that big of an issue. They have rebalanced this champion a lot in the past. It should be fine.
Is mostly ratio on base damage, and so this just moves her around to say, actually, a little bit more of the rest of your kit's going to be relevant here, but Lilia is extremely, extremely too strong.
Well, rest of her crit. She doesn't have a rest of her kit. She has an E that shoots out an orb that does like 2 damage, and she has a W which misses basically everybody all the time and barely does. Let's be honest, it doesn't do that much damage to begin with. Her entire kit is a passive in the queue. So, okay.
With all the recent changes, she still has items that really fit her. She likes when people have more health overall. She likes new Leandry. She likes Riftmaker. She's very good, very mobile, very healy. But saying, okay, well, Lilia being mobile and being durable is a good thing right now. She gets to stand out from other champions by being a fairly unique AP champion.
I do think Lilia being like the weird dot drain tank singed is like, it's like fun gameplay, but it's also frustrating gameplay. I do think that Riot maybe should not have given her an AP ratio and her movement speed and her Q, because as a like maybe they should have given like a level, like a scaling with level ratio type deal, right? But I don't think that just making her Q scale harder was that good for the game. Because particularly like as you start getting later in the game, there's a lot of champions that just simply cannot keep up with her, and like she'll outscale them, not by like outscaling them, so to speak, but she'll outscale them because they'll never be able to touch her again. So like, yeah, it's 21% movement speed plus 12% per 100 AP. At even 500 AP, that's 60% movement speed. That's 88% movement speed at only 500 AP. So like what I'm saying here is, I think maybe, in all honesty, I think maybe they keep Lilia's damage as it is, because like her damage is not really that oppressive right now. I don't think so. I think what's oppressive is like when the champion starts sprinting around, and I'm not just saying like, oh, I'm an Aatrox player, so I hate it. Like I'm just saying like you literally like look at top laners. How many top laners can actually deal with Giga Speed Lilia? Riven can try to combo stun her. But, like, Mord can't really touch her. Aatrox can't really touch her. Darius can't really touch her. Jax can maybe try to kill her in a stun, but let's be honest, she's just going to run. Like, she'll get stunned once and run away in permakite, right? Cassandra can't really do anything. Yone could maybe do something. Trundle can't. Fiora kind of, sort of can. Rumble Or say Malphite can't, Garen can't, Ornn can't, Irelia can't. Gwen can try to do funny one-shots where she just like Qs her so hard. Camille hypothetically can, just because like if she hits her ever, but like she'll just permacade forever. Like Jace can't, Set can't. Like it just like as a whole, my entire lane can't deal with that champion, and it comes down to just like, well, I hope the AD carry can shoot them. So like maybe that should be addressed. Maybe her Q movement speed should just have like a level scaling. So like later in the game, she can get like maybe at level 18, she can get like 60 to 70% movement speed, but not like, you know, like right now she's reaching over 100% permanent movement speed late game is what I'm saying here.
We'll go after damage and she'll still be mobile and pretty durable. Corki is somewhat of a reshape. The first thing is there's a bug fix. On live right now, Malignance's damage tick counts for Eclipse. Corki's primary build is Eclipse Malignance. That is clearly too good because it means landing one rocket triggers Malignance, which then triggers Eclipse. Eclipse has a fairly short cooldown, has pretty decent damage, gives him a shield as well. One rocket trigger Eclipse is clearly not expected gameplay, clearly not okay. That is his best build by far.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of expected it. I don't know if I'd call it unexpected gameplay. I would definitely not call it unexpected. You know, it's not unexpected to me that Corki started to abuse stuff and break the game. That is not unexpected to me. I expect that.
That being nerfed by a lot is, of course, a meaningful amount of power down. So there's a couple of buffs to AP ratio.
Buffs to AP ratios.
It's really just on Valkyrie right now. I guess I'll spend some time talking about this because I saw people talking about it online as well, which is I do think long-term, Corki should be a physical damage champion who builds AD like a normal marksman and doesn't have to go back to base every 5 minutes for package. I think those three things are correct for Corki that we should do in the next 2 months if we can get the time for it and nothing else is more urgent. I believe those three things should happen to Corki.
Why did you give Corki a weird ultimate anyway? It was like you guys gave him the package because you wanted him to have an ultimate without having an ultimate. But now the problem is because the package has a 5-minute cooldown. Now because it has a 5-minute cooldown, you've been constantly running into the problem where it needs to be strong enough that a 5-minute cooldown is worth it. And right now, obviously, it's not. It's not worth it. And that, or I should say, it's too worth it. Yeah, there we go. It's too worth it. And that kind of feels really annoying for everyone to deal with. It just, I don't know. I mean, I know you didn't, Phreak. I can't blame you for this one, for once. You know, you didn't give Corki the package. This is a previous developer did that. But I've never thought that this was a good balance decision.
That said, right now, Corki has a functional build, which is Malignance Rocket Poke. If you want to play him as Trinity Force or Essence Reaver, Manimune, and if you went ER, then Quick Blades, and if not, then Shojin. If you want to play that build, and maybe like Eclipse no matter what, even without Malignance, or you play Malignance even with this bug fix or whatever, I think that is a functional build. Right, you can play AD Corki, and he's functional on, again, Triforce, Hexdrink, or whatever. And you have some rockets; they're decent. The AD ratio is actually pretty solid here. You have Gatling gun. You play in mid range sometimes, right? You try to stay, facing them, and so you get the health from Triforce, health from Shojin, and you're pretty happy with that one. And he's not like a bruiser. He's not like Urgot, but he's a marksman, and he's a little bit durable, and he has some poke, whatever. There's some validity there. It's a reasonable build. It's okay. If you want to play him as Malignance and Rocket Poke, it's not the exciting build game, but also people are willing to play it, right? Like, Corki has like 6x his pick rate over the last month because people are like, oh, Eclipse Malignance is like a build, and I feel functional.
Okay.
I can do things. And so Corki existing at all is not a sin. Corki existing is a good thing. Of course, his bug fix.
No, I think Corki existing is a sin. I think anyone who's played against a good Corki has probably thought to themselves, boy, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. I don't enjoy this champion who just sits back at range, chain procking, whatever on-hit item he can find, right? Like, oh, it's Eclipse in Malignance. Okay, so next up it'll be Manimune in Malignance, right? And then blah, 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 blah. It's just like Corki existing, I'm going to be honest, it is a sin. I hate this champion. I don't think he's been an interesting champion for quite some time. And I think particularly him being this hyper-scaling Giga Carry who early and mid-game pokes you with rockets. Then later on, he Valkyries to your AD carry and just two-shots them. Just straight up, just like shoots a Q into auto attack into rocket, and your AD carry just dies from full HP. They're just dead somehow to that. Like, I don't think that's a good gameplay at all.
Power down. And so there's a direct buff back because, hey, Malignance got weaker on Corki. And here's the thing, really. Because Corki is currently a magic damage dealing champion, this champion wants to build Void Staff. There is no other meaningful way to get Magic Band in his build because there's no way in hell he's stacking Terminus. So this champion needs to build Void Staff for Crypt Bloom. And it's not Crypt Bloom because he can't build that much AP. So it has to be Void Staff. It's the only item he can buy. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any AP ratios. W's is bad. Packages is bad. Q's is pretty mediocre. Ours is intentionally bad so that you can't just play pure AP poke rockets. Your build falls off and just does nothing if you play pure AP poke rockets. That's intentional. That's how we kicked him out of pro last time. All this to say that he at least has a functional build that people like playing.
Okay, this guy's taking so long to say this. He's saying this build is good, but we want to make this build feel better. Well, here's the fundamental problem with that. If you're admitting right here outright, if you're saying we're keeping his AP ratios bad because he'll be overpowered if they're good, and then you're saying now let's make his AP ratios feel better. Like at the end of the day, is Void Staff worth building on him? Yes. Then fuck it. Like then it's good. Then it's fine, right? Like maybe the champion just sucks for game health, right? Maybe it just sucks for game health. Nothing else to say.
That's not earning a huge ban rate. So Corki is much more popular, much more powerful, actually getting played, not getting much bans. Great. I would like for Corki to be viable. But in the current state of Corki, he is leaning toward building Void Staff. He wants to buy it 4th or 5th.
Okay, but A, once again, I don't think Corki should be viable. But then B, I mean, what's the right way to put this? I think Corki's ban rate and pick rate are different because in pro play he tends to do way better than he does in solo queue, right? I think that's always been true. In pro play, it matters a lot more if you shoot a couple rockets and poke someone off an objective. In solo queue, that's just business as usual. Someone always gets poked to low HP before an objective. Say it, it's true. It happens every time. Someone could get poked by Yasuo before an objective. Doesn't even make sense, and yet it'll happen. I don't even know, dude. You'll be playing Caitlyn. You'll have Caitlyn AD carry, and she'll somehow get poked out by a Yasuo Q3 hitting her 3 times in a row. And you'll be like, dude, how? So, like, in solo queue, I'm going to be honest. I'm masters at this point, chat. My shining shinnies in chat, you know, you guys in the comments, like, none of you are making this far in this video. Leave me a comment if you actually made it this far in the video, right? But like, I promise you, I'm goddamn masters. Still, people get poked out by the dumbest shit all the time. So like in pro play, it matters a lot, okay? But the second thing I was trying to say here is with Akali being this broken, with Twisted Fate being this broken, with Katarina being this broken, right? Like, a lot of people are just banning those champions than ever even looking at Corki, because no one looks at Corki, right?
And so for now, we have to embrace he has AP ratios, and this means that we can say, okay, well, it's not going to be the poke rockets. It's if you can go in and play aggressive Valkyrie, it's there. It's not a lot, don't get me wrong, but it's a nudge to say, hey, we know you have to build AP some. We know building Malignance is how you're...
Oh, shoot.
...leaning toward building Void Staff. He wants to buy it 4th or 5th. And so for now, we have to embrace he has AP ratios. And this means that we say, okay, well, it's not going to be poke rockets. It's if you can go in and play aggressive Valkyrie.
Okay, I'm just going
to... delete package is...
yes, okay.
We're health off of him. That's fine.
Okay, there we go.
But that's kind of all. It's like, hey...
So I need to just skip ahead.
Trundle has, of course, been too good for too long. We're taking some flat health damage off of... him. So
oh, no, I don't like that. No. Don't make Trundle squishier. No. What are you doing? What are you doing, Riot? What are you doing? Trundle is a non-gap closing melee champion. He can only gap close. Or say he can't gap close. Look, I just pulled up the list. Here's Trundle. Trundle is not the tankiest dude in the world. Even excluding Kled and Skarl, Trundle is next to Renekton. He's next to Shyvana. He's next to those giga tanks like Azir, okay, Callista. He's next to those giga tanks up here like Talon, Katarina, okay. So what I'm saying is Trundle's not out of line. He's not out of line. He's got less HP than Set, Ilaoi, Olaf. Like, the dude is fine. He's perfectly in line on a stat level with other non-gap closing melee. If you want to nerf his Q damage, that's fine, and you should do that. But but his health should stay. Otherwise, you're pushing him to be too squishy. He's not Master Yi, okay? He shouldn't be squishy. He should be perfectly fine building tank items.
Some flat damage.
Trundle already has low health per level, low armor per level to make up for his ultimate. Low armor per level, low health per level. Great. Is he supposed to be a juggernaut at this point? Or is he just like a high damage melee? Is he just Fiora, Aurelia? Like what we know.
Off of his Q. Early game skewed nerf to Trundle. Wukong has been pretty...
Okay, I'm sorry, but like the bias here is starting to become really obvious. He's like, here's Corki, 20 minutes go by. Here's Trundle. Oh, we nerfed him. Fuck that guy. Corki's just like, we're going to adjust him a little bit. Like, they're giving him little adjustments. He goes on for 5 minutes. Here's Trundle. How long did he spend on Trundle? In total. I'm going to time it.
For too long. We're taking some flat health damage off
okay.
of
Trundle. So we started 3502.
Has, of course, been too good for too long. We're taking some flat health damage off of, some flat health off of him, some flat damage off of his Q. Early game skewed nerf to Trundle.
8 seconds. It was 2502 to 2510. 8 seconds. In a 59-minute video, he spent 8 seconds on Trundle. I'm just saying, am I biased? No. How do you spend on Wukong? So it was 2-5-11. We started Wukong.
Been pretty weak for a while. We know he's been pro-jailed. The designer who's doing the balance updates to Wukong in this patch wants to do some larger scope patchwork in 14.4. I think it's a really good idea to do this. I think we have some really, really promising leads here of what to give, what to take to make Wukong not a pro-jailed champion. But he's like a 48% win rate jungler and like a 49% win rate top laner. He kind of sucks in both roles, and he still gets a little bit of pro play. Like, oof, this champion's in a really bad spot. Anyway, we're buffing him quite a bit right now. I think there's a really good chance he shows up in pro somewhat, but that's fine. It's not like Wukong being in pro at all is a problem. Obviously, this champion could get buffed. And so,
okay.
The primary change here is increasing the rank 1 through 4 range on Q. We could have made this flat 175.
So basically, he's getting more range on his early game Q, which gives him more poke in lane and allows him to lane a bit more intelligently. I know I made fun of Tryndamere getting more range on his passive, making him easier. But the thing is, Wukong getting more poke in his Q, that does mean that he can poke better, space better. It means he can do more than just EQ, RQ, RQ, right? It means he can actually try to like get in some damage, then go in, which lets his opponents have more gameplay to play around, right? I know it's a point and click, but there's lots of point and click abilities in the game, right? So I definitely think that that's like, if you're gonna buff him, that's probably, yeah.
5, it still scales a little bit with rank, but not a bunch. E cooldown goes down with rank. And the AD ratio on Q goes up as well, so there's not a lot of AD ratios in the kit overall. Ultimately, we want to give 1.5-2% win rate to Wukong in the top lane.
Wukong being a 51% win rate champion is bad for the game. EQ, RQ, RQ is still really irritating for game health. Literally just E in, then Q, then R, then Q, then R, then Q. That kills the majority of champions, doesn't really have any counterplay, and is really unfun to deal with. So he's been weaker so that he can't, do that as easily. But I don't think this champion should be viable until you address EQ, RQ, RQ. Because, like, it's not really fun playing a Juggernaut into Wukong. It's not really fun playing Mord, or playing Darius, or playing any of these immobile champions. Even Olaf, right? Even Olaf can struggle against EQ, RQ, RQ. If you don't have any range, and you don't have any like damage reduction abilities, like at the end of the day, because Wukong is so much armor pen and percent health damage, it does mean that the tankiness difference between a Juggernaut and a Bruiser, the Bruiser will end up actually typically being tankier against Wukong. Because a champion like Jax will have Counter-Strike. A champion like Aurelia will have her W, right? But Juggernauts tend to rely on their base stats, right? Illaoi, Darius, all these champions rely on lots of base HP, lots of base armor, right? But you don't really have that against Wukong. Not as much anyway.
We are pretty confident, I think, that there is a pretty solid, pretty low scope up that we can do that puts Wukong in a big spot. I think Wukong, by the way, should be able to hit like 51.5, 52 in top lane.
Okay.
Trinity, Titanic, Sundered, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so Shyvana is getting buffed. Okay, so her QAD ratio is going back. Her Q attack speed is going up. It's interesting. And her W movement speed ratio. Wait, what?
Stuff, you're fine. If you're building AP, she's really bad. She was another champion where she's melee and has Night Harvester. Turns out she really liked that. So there's some small stuff here. This is the AP ratio and the bonus attack speed on her Q, which will affect some clears, as well as just like when she builds natural.
Oh no, so just buffing AP Shyvana. Why? AD Shyvana might be less interesting from a game perspective, but it's way healthier for the game. AP Shyvana is awful for League.
Bunch of stuff, which again is largely clears, but you can be in combat sometimes. The bonus move speed on W has an AP ratio onto it. That's getting increased as well. It's AP ratio specific buffs, but also the attack speed is going to be used by AD Shyvana.
No. That's a bad idea. AP Shyvana is awful for the game. I hate her. Everyone
Zeri
hates her.
Is getting some base AD and a substantial decrease to her early R cooldown. So I have held the theory for a while now that ulti cooldown is a very potent, ulti cooldown / ulti potency is a very, very strong pro lever. That's what I did when I made the last Vi update back in late 2023, where she was pro jailed as like a 49% jungler, and now she's like 51 and change and not pro jailed. She's in pro, but like she's just healthy everywhere, and it was lowering the base value of R as much as I could, where it still felt like an ultimate, but it wasn't like, well, yeah, of course we wait for every ult cooldown and then someone gets one shot. It's like, nah, you don't one shot anymore. The damage isn't there. But you are a sustained fighter, and you're pretty durable, and that's fine. And you can like, if you earn gold, you'll do a good job there. And it's like, yeah, actually, that works really, really well. And so my
Wait, so you're saying that champions not being balanced on being funny one-shot champions makes it healthier for the game? That's crazy. Who knew that? Who knew that? I wonder if there's one dude who's been playing League of Legends since it came out who would say that champions shouldn't be funny one-shot champions. That champions being funny one-shot champions is not good for the game. That it's quite bad for the game. It's me. I said that. I did this.
Suggested here, I like, spoke with the designer. Was like, here's what I think you should do, and he's like, that makes sense, sure, let's do it. And then he wrote basically, I've been
timing it, by the way. The amount of time he spends talking about 80 carries is so much longer than the time he spends talking about any other champion.
Let's bring the R cooldown as low as possible. I picked Master Yi as an example of a champion with a flat 85-second ult cooldown, and I'm like, that's probably about right for Zeri, where you're not going to buy haste typically. I know she often buys quick blades. I know she's currently buying Eternal Hexblade. Both of those are wrong. She's built Infinity Edge and also should not be going to So there's a recommended update to get people off of Hexblade. The item is not good on her, stop doing it. But I understand why you would do it, because the ult cooldown is quite long, and being just a simple snare, like it's not Ashe Arrow or Varus ult where it's like, oh, I press the button.
Yes. Okay, cool. Items do stuff.
And so it's bringing the cooldown quite long. Okay. And so you really shouldn't need haste. It should be up when you need it. And in SoloQ, when you need it is like all the time. And in pro play, that's going to sound cool forever because everybody's going to fight anyway. And so it's really a way to give her SoloQ power without pushing her too hard in pro. I think Zeri probably should have a somewhat.
Yeah. Well, didn't you guys give her the ultimate burst? If I'm not wrong, wasn't it Riot who made her ult like really bursty, which then
flatter power?
Yeah.
I don't think Zeri should be one of the premier late game hyper carries. Like Aphelios, absolutely yes. I think that makes absolute sense here. I think Kog'Maw theoretically makes absolute sense here. Protect the Kog'Maw, not raise the happiness, that's something else obviously, but like, Juggernaut type comps, like, yeah, he's the primary carry, and like people get it when you play a whole team around Kog'Maw. It's like, yeah, this is what a champion does. Like, I understand you.
Why are we talking about Kog'Maw right now, man?
Damage, yeah, sure. Jinx somewhat, I think it's reasonable. And we had the Aphelios Jinx meta.
Remember, we spent 8 seconds on Trundle. We spent 1.5 minutes, I think it was, on Wukong. We're up to like 3 goddamn minutes on Zeri. And for what? We increased her base AD, we increased her R cooldown, and then we updated her items.
Zeri, like just Zeri immediately like, yeah, I don't want to see that pro. And so Zeri is not a hyper carry, but like actually kind of early game, or at least like flat. I think it's probably pretty reasonable. And so hey, R is buffed rank 1 and 2, and base AD is Universal 1 of course. And so it's buffed that slightly flatten out Zeri a little bit, not by a ton of course, but a little bit. I think it's universally pretty good. Ilaoi is.
Oh my god, how long did we spend on this champion, dude? It was literally 3 minutes.
Back in late.
Oh my god, dude, like I'm not biased here. I'm not crazy. He does.
In and do stuff. So the overall range on Ilaoi Tentacles is up. It's hard to know exactly how much power it's going to be, of course. It could be that we over or undershoot this, but it's getting paired with a generically roughly minus 10% damage. This is both the base damage and the AD ratio on Q are both down about 10%, so about 10% less damage on Tentacles. To compensate, of course, for the big tentacle range and the fact that our win rate is currently quite good. If Ilaoi goes sub
I need to verify that. Remember, it's 51% at a low pick value. 50% at the higher ranks. What's her win rate in Diamond? What you had, Ilaoi? Did I bypass her? Nope, 50%. Her win rate doesn't really seem out of line compared to where it used to be. So basically, her tentacles will get more range and less damage, which is like fine, I guess.
50 would probably buffer. If we get it wrong, are bad, but roughly the world we're in.
Wow, once again, another Bruiser. He's like, we're increasing our range and reducing our damage. Bye. I'm like, wait, what? He's like, fuck you. This isn't an 80 carry.
Nidalee, we updated her items to recommend Lichbane. We are incrementally increasing the Lichbane pick rate on her. It is still her best first item. People are slowly moving over that way, but she's not really getting more powerful. People are kind of bad at Nidalee. On average, obviously in Elite, she's kind of fine. She's not great, but like she's much more okay. In Masters hands than Silver hands, of course. And we're gonna fix that, right? That's not gonna be something really happens here. But ultimately, yeah, we don't want off Nidalee. We want off about 2% rate. I think it's a champion who...
Okay, I'm just saying, like, dude, oh my god, I'm noticing it so hard. Every time he comes to a Bruiser, he's just like, yeah, go fuck yourself. But every time he talks about like another champion, he's like, "Oh my god, I can't wait to talk about this champion." Right? He talked about Trundle. He's like, "Screw you." He talked about Wukong. He's like, "We'll do it. Its designer's gonna do an update later." He talked about Shyvana. He's like, "I don't know, maybe Shyvana." He talks about Outlier. He's like, "I don't give a shit." Right? Like it's clear, dude. He doesn't pay any attention to Bruisers. It's actually crazy watching it in real time.
I'm not saying it's exciting on her, but like Rod of Ages and Riftmaker, not Riftmaker, are, I think, kind of reasonable on the champion. She goes into melee a fair bit, but looking at her overall stats, like she has a pretty appropriate amount of baseline durability when you look at like her health and overall stats. Like she's pretty normal if you compare to chance to go in and out, looking at, you know, a Rex kind of champion or a like Karma or like a Morgana or something where it's like I'm ranged, I'm sometimes like kind of melee, and I'm ranged again. It's like opportunistic champions should just be baseline really tanky because they're very mobile and have ways of staying away very far. And so I think Lily can get much more baseline durable, a little bit maybe, but not by a lot. Her damage of course is quite high. Ultimately, I don't think there's an easy way to make her easier to play, and we're not really trying to do that, but trying to find out what parts of the kit can we like give her sort of durability on that, making her.
So they want to buff her E healing and E attack speed.
Really sucks. And so it's pretty substantial buffs here on the base value and the ratio on the E. The attack speed on this button is going up a little bit here as well. And I'm going to add one more thing to this. One I had was a little bit of magic growth to have her match someone like Lilia or something where it's like, yeah, you're mobile and kind of melee, and you're sort of in this world where you like should be able to survive a Syndra ult in a lot of cases because you have enough MR to knock it one shot by like double pen builds, that kind of thing. So we'll see what it ends up being, but I think we're going to tack on one more line here than Nidalee. And again, the goal is about 2% win rate generically. This will make her pretty good in Elite, and that's just always the case here. So there's a situation here where I think in isolation...
Okay, let's just know. They're nerfing the RQ. They're doing that. They're nerfing the RQ. Let's see how long it takes him to talk about Karma. Maybe I'm horribly wrong here.
She's like a 49% win rate support. She's like a 49.8% win rate top laner and like a 51% win rate mid laner. Those are very, very normal win rates for lots of champions. Zyras are just higher in every role, basically.
Yeah, but the difference is Karma is being picked way more than Zyra. Like, I'm not making this up. Karma, even at Diamond, is 14.9% pick rate. So let's just cut that 50% pick rate, right? Let's go down to Zyra. Did I pass Zyra? Did I pass? Like, no, here's Zyra. Zyra's 4.5%. Zyra's being picked a third as much as Karma. For every 3 people picking Karma, there's 1 Zyra. So like that's just something that's just a stat I think worth considering when we're comparing it here.
I think right now, and Zyra's not a great example here. Regardless, like Karma's win rates are fine. That said,
I think her win rates arguably are fine until you realize that her pick rate. Let me just compare the 2 patches, right? So like here's this patch, here's last patch. 5.5% pick rate to 14.9%. There's obviously a little bit of like growing pains here. As all these new people start to play Karma, and a lot of them don't really know what they're doing, and they're using their R on the wrong ability constantly. That's gonna change as time goes on. More and more people get good at Karma. More and more people realize that you shouldn't just RW. Just because you have Mantra available doesn't mean you should just instantly use it on the first available ability, right? More and more people should realize, oh, I'm being hurt. Let me Mantra my shield. No, Mantra your tether. That'll end up giving you more survivability, right? Like, so just something to consider here, talking about win rates this much on a champion whose pick rate tripled. Name me a champion whose win rate tripled and didn't have their win rate go down a little bit.
Players their pick rate. Level of power. So here's the weird thing, right? So it's like, okay, well, obviously we just buffed Karma. We buffed very, very hard. Obviously they're really, really big buffs. That was intentional. And I wanted to say, hey, it's been years. How do players at large feel about roughly 50% win rate Karma? And if you look at ban rate, especially in high elo, it is like practically a straight line up. Not a ton of champions have more ban rate than pick rate, but Karma does in Diamond.
Yeah, because her pick rate tripled, and then the people who fight good karmas, I'm sure you guys have thought about the difference here, right? Bad karmas will mantra W, run away, then walk back in, then hit you with a regular Q, then use a basic tether, then get like pulled by Darius and die because they just used all their abilities in the worst ways. Good karmas will kite out, with Qs and tether, and then if the tether actually goes off, they RQ and burst your entire health bar down. If the tether doesn't go off, then they just back off and go back to poking, with Qs, or maybe they RQ just to get a giga slow to put you away, right? Like, I'm saying there are times when you can use mantras. There are karmas who won't use mantra Q because they're going to save it for the next tether because they know they can't kill you right now and they know they're going to need to heal a little bit, right? And so I'm just saying, like, there's very clearly growing pains right now on this champion because you just need to know what to mantra and when. And it's not like a huge skill gap. I'm just saying that, like, I can very clearly tell the difference between karmas that just awkwardly run up and die and karmas that perfectly kite out at mid-range and never let you get to play the game because she has a shield, a heal, and a slow, and a root.
And ban rate tends to lag, so it's going to very quickly overshoot her pick rate by a lot. So, highly skilled players who play SoloQ are like, this champ is Thanos. So, okay, we're going to act pretty early. We knew these were pretty lofty buffs. And so what we're trying to do is lower Karma's power as a triple threat. To embrace Karma's primary role as support, I think is totally fine and totally reasonable. I think that is fine to do. I think Karma being a lane bully is actually probably a pretty good thing.
No, it's not.
Strategically,
how is that a good thing?
Marksman supports.
Why is it every time there's like a ranged champion that they don't know what to do with, right? There's like a ranged champion, and it's like, where is this ranged champion gonna lane? They like look around the map, and they're like, ranged top lane bully. We did it, guys. We figured it out. Another ranged top lane bully. And they all, yay, we did it. We found a role for this champion. Yay. And they joined the huge list of lane bully top laners who are ranged and don't scale very well. Now, before you say I'm being crazy, let's look at the list of ranged top laners who are lane bullies without scaling very well. Let's look through this great list. Let's just look through like Masters Plus here. Don't pay attention to the win rates because these pick rates will be low here, okay? So let's find them. Okay, so we've got Rumble, debatably. Jace, ooh, another one. So we already are at 2 champions who poke the shit out of you at range and then don't scale very well. Okay, we got Gnar, we've got Kennen, we've Got Vayne, although Vayne does scale well, hence why, it's caused some issues. We've got Karma, we've got Teemo, Vladimir doesn't scale very well, so that's why, we've got Quinn, we've got Cassiopeia, even though she does scale. Against some comps, Cassiopeia scales really good, and against some comps, she can't do anything past mid-game. We've got Akshan. Now we've got Twisted Fate. Thank you for that one, Riot. We've got Varus, although Varus, once again, does sometimes scale well. Again, like, it depends on the comp. Some of these ranged top laners will not do anything after the early game, and some can. Like, Vayne is obviously going to struggle past the early game into some champions, like Irelia, or even Jax, or even Camille, right? Or Yone, right? So, like, there's many top laners who, like, when you pick them, these range tops cannot do anything after the early game. Like, they can cheese them out early game, but then they fall off a cliff, right? My point here is, do we really need another ranged lane bully who beats the crap out of you early game and then gets outscaled? Is that really what we need more of? We really need more of this. By the way, once again, notice how much time he spent on Karma versus any of the Bruisers.
Like Varus and Ashe or whatever, instead of like picking Heimerdinger or Karma. And you can think that we just don't have any good lane bully supports. I know players often don't like playing against lane bullies, but also I would much rather Karma and Heimerdinger and Zyra and Lux be the default lane bullies than Varus. Personally, I just think like the game is in a better state when that's the chance you're picking, because at least they make sense. So I think pretty strongly that we should try to make sure that like highly skilled players, I'm not saying pro, like I'm trying to say like highly skilled players should look at Karma and maybe again, for example here, one that you can maybe bring back and say these are the champions that you would want to play if you're saying I want a lot of pressure, I want to turbo push here, I just want lane control a little here. Power just power into.
He's just going on and on.
What was overbuffed in the previous patch? Some mix of this is his passive was doing too much damage. Some mix of this is people are building a lot more health because
I'm gonna be honest, I'm so uninterested in Brand right now, and as we're closing in on the 2-hour mark, I think I just have to cut Brand out here. Brand's getting nerfed because he's overpowered. Ta-da, we did it. Okay, cool. Like, I don't... Does anyone care about Brand? Is anyone sitting here like, we're nerfing Brand because he's overpowered? Like, I don't care.
Getting some damage on Q, getting some cooldown on E. She's just very weak in the new season. Plus, last chapter items getting better.
Talia's getting buffed. Okay, cool.
Pike is not doing too well with the new items either. So it's some base armor, it's some Q mana cost, it's some Q AD ratio, it's some move speed. I think it's base move speed and lethality scaling on the W, and it's some damage on the E as well. Quite a lot of buffs here. A lot of small things individually, but quite a bit of win rate here to Pike. Azir is a 50% win.
How many buffs is a 50% win rate champion getting, Riot? How many buffs? Riot? What?
Win rate SoloQ champion. That means he's clearly too good for how difficult to play this champion's supposed to be. Like, he's clearly overtuned if he has that win rate because people just don't have the mastery on him. Just globalist, that's true. The big thing here with Azir is...
Shocking. Okay, once again, I don't care. Azir's getting nerfed because he has 50% win rate. Shocking. Wow, that's crazy. Yes, okay. Did anyone think otherwise? If Azir has 48% win rate, Riot should start taking notes and being like, oh my god, this dude's got 48? Oh boy, that's bad. Like, this champion should never pass 47% win rate. That's just my opinion. Your average Azir player just doesn't really know how to play the champion, and your good Azir player does, like, a perfect, like, WQE, auto, ult, auto, Q forward, auto, sand soldier, auto, Q, auto, W, auto, super auto, and you're just like, dude, it's been like 2 seconds, he's cast 19 abilities and hit me 37 times.
Fleet footwork has finally taken over as his best rune. This has been very good on him for a long time. People didn't move over until 14.1 base now that the season has dropped.
Oh shit, I clicked the wrong button.
I used to build Shadowflame, both of which had health. So armor 20 and really between all the time. He going. Rengar.
Okay, wait. Let's watch. How much time do you spend on Rengar versus any of these mages?
Is extremely too good in elite levels of play.
Okay.
High win rate, high ban rate. Base health goes down, and AD ratios on Q go down because snowballing less good, and especially for top lane Rengar, a better chance to fight back against him. He can't just stat check you, or there's going to be some matchups that can kill him one auto sooner, and this might, give him some weaker matchups. Zig.
Azir gets health regen, goes on for 3 minutes. Rengar's getting some health and Q ratio nerfs, like 20 seconds.
Definitely was affected in the stat chart update that made him clearly too good bot laner. Right now, I think we're under 1% delta between Ziggs mid and Ziggs bot. I don't mind Ziggs bot being reasonably good. If he's like 51.5, 52 in bot, I think it's okay. If we have to continue to try to unsee this champion, we can, but like Ziggs 52 in bot lane is fine. Ziggs getting to 51 in mid, I think is very reasonable and something that I think is something he should be allowed to be. So we know that armor changes are a little bit bot lane skewed for Ziggs. The W change was basically not bot lane skewed at all. So this is basically reverting the changes from the last couple of patches here, where we were trying to find bot lane skewed levers. Again, the armor actually was, the W really wasn't. And again, I'm willing to eat some amount of bot lane skew here. I think it's okay. But hey, Ziggs, of course, is in a world where he has no armor shard, and his base armor being 18 makes him really, really bad into champions like Yasuo or Talon or Zed in the mid lane.
You don't say.
I'm trying to raise mage baseline armor up to like 21, 22 in a lot of cases, because I think that is reasonable when they're facing off against assassins. They no longer have access to easy armor. They have to buy a arm guard, which is, of course, not cheap. So, give him some baseline armor because I think just like making sure he doesn't have really egregiously horrible.
I'm just saying it's blatantly obvious what interests him and what doesn't interest him. Okay, so we're nerfing Ziggs armor. Great, cool, awesome. We spent 30 minutes on it. We're nerfing Rengar's health. Dude doesn't even explain why. He's like going into all these reasonings on Ziggs, like, we think armor is good, we don't want him to buy armor, if you buy lethality it does too much damage, blah blah. It's like, we nerf Rengar because he too good. Okay, cool. Like,
horrible matchups.
And here's me, like, I'm not interested. Okay, so you're nerfing his armor and you're giving his satchel a lower cooldown. That's cool, that's awesome, right? Like, Ziggs is a bit underpowered, you undertuned him. Now you've got all these item changes and stuff coming out. Now he's a bit undertuned because he was overtuned with the previous items. Okay, but like...
And then also, I want, of course, is at the back in the Championscape.
Okay, let's go to Maokai.
Maokai is getting quite a few changes here. Maokai
is
one of the champions who benefited the most with the new season. Number one, he already liked building Deadman's Plate back in the old season, and now he has better Deadman's Plate called Trailblazer because it's a support skewed Deadman's Plate, which of course he is happy to build. But
okay, instead of going through this, I'm just gonna read because I think they have the changes right here. Okay, so basically, do they have the actual Maokai changes here? Yes. Okay. I'm not going to read all that. Basically, Maokai's passive, instead of having base numbers, is going to heal entirely on HP. And then, okay, so his base mana regen is going down. His health is being changed. His Q cooldown is being changed. His E cooldown is being changed. And his R cooldown is being changed. So basically, in other words, a level 6 Maokai will be weaker. He can either choose to reduce, so like basically his Q will be at a lower cooldown with lower mana cost, which will make him significantly better in top lane. His E cooldown is going from 14 constant to 16 to 12, so they probably want to push him maxing his E, right? His Q cooldown is going down to 7 seconds base, so it seems what they want to do is they want him to put maybe like 1 point into Q, then max E, then max Q, and his ultimate cooldown is going up at the early levels, down at the higher levels. His passive is being changed to purely total HP. No more base HP on his passive at all. So Maokai will, I mean, it's hard to say here. He'll heal more if he actually builds health items, like real health items. He'll heal about the same if he doesn't. In other words, it seems, I can't say for sure what they're trying to do here. Phreak probably says it, but I'm going to be honest. Like, I don't think he entirely knows what he's doing with Maokai here. I don't think Riot really does. I think what they're trying to do is push him to more being like a brush camping top laner. But I think one of the problems here is that he needs to use his Q to push the wave. So if he doesn't max his Q, it's going to make too long of a cooldown. And then people can... people could use the times between his Q to kill him. So I don't know. It's just it's a weird change.
Also, he's no longer fighting against a wave. Really, he is like.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just don't really care about these champions.
But it's not going to affect pro play all that.
Okay, cool. Maokai, yes. Zyra, yes. Yoric.
He
better spend like 5 minutes on Yoric because these are actually. Let me go through these changes because they're actually like fairly significant changes. It's on one of these PvE patches. Oh boy. Okay. So, oh god, there's so many of them. I don't even know where to go with this. So basically, his ghoul leash range, is going down. What's the other right way to put this? So basically, his ghouls will leash back to him with less range. They'll push the wave, outside of this. So it's way easier for him to. It's way easier for him to get his ghouls into the minion wave and to get them pushing the minion wave without him. It also allows him to do some really... I don't know if this is going to go live, but it allows him to do some really jank things where he can press E on an enemy and his minions will jump on that enemy. And then if he walks away, so the enemy is 1600 more range than him, the E will then summon minions from graves next to them, and he'll go above 4 minions because technically the 4 minions that are now attacking them are outside of leash range and now considered to be pushing the lane. So he can potentially get up to, I think they capped it at 8 minions. If he plays it perfectly, he can get 8 minions jumping on an enemy, which is really weird. Yeah. His Q healing is going, I think do they have the change over here? Yorick, Mr. Yorick. Yorick. Oh god, see, this is why they need to be like listing the changes they're doing, because like otherwise I'm sitting here scrolling through 19 different PvE nodes. Okay, here we have it. Okay, so Yorick's Q mana cost is going from 25 to 20. Then the healing is going to 48% based on his missing HP, 50% of that against minions. So Yorick's Q heal will no longer just be a flat amount that doesn't scale and kind of does absolutely nothing. It will now heal 4 to 8%, half against minions. So even at high HP, he'll heal 2% of his health against minions, which should be about the same of what it is right now. Against opposing champions, this definitely gives him way more healing. And definitely, like, if he starts going to low HP, this gives him way more ability to stay in a fight. And in particular, this gives him way more ability to, like, build health and actually continue to scale. So I really like what they're doing with this one. I think that's, like, a really good idea, actually. And then, oh god, and then, okay, so there's no more cooldown on his ultimate. So like his maiden does damage to a champion and just marks them. And now every single attack you do against a marked target does 2 to 4% damage. Instead of 3 to 9% on a 2 seconds cooldown, it's now just 2 to 4% every single proc. So if maiden marks someone and you run up and you Q, or say you auto, then Q reset into an auto, or if you buy Trinity and you're auto attacking a lot, you'll do, to be blunt, you'll probably be doing about the same damage. Basically this seems to be lowering, definitely it lowers his burst, but I think importantly it kind of lowers his damage entirely. So in other words, his E cast time will be lower. His Q will heal more, but his ultimate damage is getting nerfed. And in addition to that, they've got some really weird leash range changes going out, where potentially in the laning phase, you can set it up so that you can get 8 ghouls jumping on someone. It's not going to be common. In fact, you might not even get it in a game. You might go through entire games without ever seeing this, but it's like something that's kind of cool that like you can do. Like you E someone, then run away, get them out of leash range, then the graves next to him continue to summon more than 4 ghouls. Like, I don't know, like I get it. It's cool, I guess.
Yoric to into
okay, Ace hold changes.
There's a small set of changes to Shaco here as well.
Okay. Is that everything? Okay, that's everything. I'm sorry. I'm like nearing 2 hours of this video. I don't think any of you will even get to this point in the video. The champions that I'm looking at this point are so uninteresting. I just don't care, and I think I'm just gonna end it here. So there's the 13.3 mega preview video. Thank you all who possibly got this far. I doubt many of you did, but thank you all. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, my shiny shinnies. And I hope you guys enjoyed this mega patch preview while the servers were on maintenance. This is gonna take like 3 hours to upload. It's a 2-hour video, man. Okay, thank you all. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, everybody.